On August 3, 2016, nearly 300 passengers filed through the gates at Thiruvananthapuram Airport in southern India, heading back from summer holidays. They were boarding Emirates Flight 521. The aircraft waiting for them was a Boeing 777 with over 58,000 flight hours. As she lifted off for the 3.5-hour trip to Dubai, every system on board was functioning exactly as intended. Flying her was a 34-year-old captain who had reached his rank a decade earlier than the industry average. But his training record carried two specific notes. First, he had a tendency to flare his landings, pulling the nose up before touchdown a few feet too early. Second, under pressure, he sometimes suffered from tunnel vision, locking on to a single task while becoming blind to his surroundings. On any other day, those habits wouldn't matter. But today, they align with a scenario where the pilots, computers, and air traffic control are operating on completely different versions of reality. An aircraft with zero mechanical flaws is about to fall out of the sky because minor human quirks have perfectly intersected with a specific technological blind spot. To understand how a modern airliner crashes without a mechanical failure, you have to look at the environment it's landing in. Dubai International manages hundreds of arrivals and thousands of moving parts simultaneously. It is an operation that depends on the right information reaching the right hands at the right time. But during the extreme heat of the summer, the airport sensors trigger wind shear warnings so frequently that pilots have learned to treat them as background noise. They are seen as routine precautions, cautions that eventually turn into noise. As Flight 521 descends, the crew assumes they are facing a standard hot day. They are unaware that just ahead of them, two separate passenger jets have already aborted their landings because they were unable to stay down on the runway. Those pilots reported the conditions to the tower, but the warning went out on a frequency Flight 521 wasn't monitoring. The controllers have the data, but they failed to broadcast these go-arounds to the approaching Emirates crew. The first layer of defense, human communication, fails not because the radios are broken, but because the information is sitting in a silo. Down on the runway, a localized weather anomaly has taken shape. The intense heat over the city has pulled in a sea breeze front that has stalled directly over the touchdown zone. This creates a severe wind shear boundary. When a plane crosses this line, it hits a wall of air moving in the opposite direction. Because a wing only cares about the speed of air flowing over it, this sudden headwind spikes the airspeed, generating a surge of unwanted lift. This animated diagram shows how the 777's radar scans the air ahead, looking for moisture droplets to detect wind shear. But Dubai is a desert. Without moisture to reflect the pulses, the radar scans empty space and stays silent. The aircraft's safety systems were functional, yet they were physically incapable of seeing a dry microburst. Without a warning from the computer or the controllers, the pilots have no reason to believe anything is wrong. Flight 521 crosses the invisible sea breeze boundary mere feet above the concrete. The headwind jumps 12 knots in seconds, and the 200-ton aircraft lurches upward.
Faster, more urgently. Because the cockpit alarms are silent, the captain misinterprets this sudden lift. He assumes they have hit standard desert thermals and pushes the nose down, trying to force the plane onto the runway. But remember his training record. The captain initiated his flare 10 feet too high. By raising the nose early, he created a cushion of high-pressure air between the wings and the runway, a phenomenon called ground effect that keeps the plane suspended. The computer assumes the landing is happening and pulls the engines to idle. Now Flight 521 is caught in a zombie state. They are flying too slow to climb, but they are generating too much lift to land. They are simply floating down the runway, eating up over a kilometer of concrete. The pilot's physical sensations are actively contradicting the actual aerodynamic reality of the aircraft. Long past the touchdown zone, the right main landing gear finally kisses the runway for a fraction of a second. The plane bounces, and the wheels lift away again. This logic flowchart illustrates a Boeing safety protocol. When the gear touched the runway, the computer switched from air mode to ground mode. This intentionally disables the automatic go-around switches, preventing a plane from accidentally taking off after landing. Because the wheels only touched for a moment, the captain doesn't realize he has officially landed. He calls for a go-around and presses the switches from muscle memory. But as his tunnel vision returns, he focuses entirely on the pitch of the nose, unaware that the computer has ignored his request for power. The pilot asks for thrust.
The software silently denies it. And because he is hyper-focused on the rotation, he doesn't notice that the thrust levers beneath his hand haven't moved. The aircraft climbs briefly on momentum, trading speed for height. But at 85 feet, the energy runs out. The forward speed drops, the wings stop generating lift, and the plane begins to fall. The jet slams into the runway at 124 knots. The right engine is torn away, and the fuel ignites instantly. The aircraft slides on its belly for 800 meters, grinding to a halt in a cloud of smoke and fire. Inside, passengers scramble to evacuate, some dangerously stopping to grab luggage from overhead bins. While every passenger and crew member makes it out alive, the event ends in tragedy when the center fuel tank explodes. A firefighter, Jassin al-Balushi, is struck by a falling panel while at his post. He was the only one who didn't go home. The crash reveals a stark reality. 300 people survived a collision that was entirely avoidable, caused by a series of silent, invisible failures. Industry changes followed immediately. Dubai ATC must now pass go-around data to every following aircraft, and Boeing revised its procedures to require that pilots manually verify throttle movement during a go-around. Aviation operates on a foundation of redundancy. Computers and software process millions of variables across thousands of flights every hour, usually smoothing over the inconsistencies of the physical world. But Flight 521 shows what happens when human intuition and machine logic fail to communicate. When a computer follows its programming and a pilot follows his habits, a lethal gap can open between the two. In an era of heavy automation, the most dangerous threat isn't a blaring alarm. It is silence.